From the Oklahoman newsroom, it's time for Thunder Thursday. I'm Jenny Carlson here in studio with our entire Thunder coverage team. Don't you guys ever take vacation? What's going on here? It's summertime, right?
Literally no.
No, okay, all right.
I haven't done that yet. We're gonna.
No vacation right now, but columnist Barry Trammell, beat writers Eric Horn, Brett Dawson here to talk about Thunder stuff. And guys, the biggest news is the fact that we've had non-news at this point about Carmelo Anthony, which the Thunder doesn't have to do anything in the short term. But Brett, what's your impression about where things stand right now as it relates to him?
Well, they have a long time, really, still, relatively speaking. August 31st is the day by which Thunder would have to decide if they're going to waive Carmelo Anthony and stretch that $27.9 million he's owed over 3 years. So that still gives them more than a month to kind of play around with trades, and that's what I think is happening right now. The Thunder's engaged in a lot of conversations with a lot of teams, most likely trying to find the best situation that gets Carmelo to a place where he'll be waived and become a free agent, and the Thunder takes back something to help that other team. Maybe the Thunder throws in additional incentives, maybe the other team throws in a couple of players. There's a whole lot of moving parts they have to figure out. The key thing is, though, they don't have to figure those things out until August 31st, so they can really talk to literally every team in the league, and it wouldn't surprise me if they're making that call to basically every team just to say, hey, is there anything maybe people don't know is on the market that you want to move off of that we could help you by sending you Carmelo?
Well, and I think that's reflective, Eric, in the fact that almost every day you sort of are hearing maybe different rumors. I mean, yesterday it was Atlanta and Dennis Schroeder, and would they send him potentially in a trade situation? You know, now Hassan Whiteside might be in a deal. The Kings are out there as a possible involved party in all this. I mean, it really sounds like it's anybody's guess right now where this could go.
Yeah, the rumors typically start with the teams that have cap space left. Those teams are going to be more willing to take on a Carmelo contract because they can absorb some of the money and not have to send back in much as in assets. So those are the teams you look for, the Atlantas, maybe Dallas, Sacramento. Chicago's capped out. They were one of those teams as of last week, but then they signed Jabari Parker from Milwaukee. So you look at those teams first, and then you start to look at the other teams, and then once you look at the other teams, it's going to be difficult because the Thunder is going to have to take back as much salary as they're sending out. So that means they'd have to take back around $28 million, which is really what they're trying to avoid doing. They don't have a problem paying for the team and the team being expensive, but it would also be nice to have an expensive team and save some money at the same time.
Yeah, and Barry, I'm curious. I mean, we obviously don't know who this is ultimately going to involve, but the fact that the Thunder have this massive contract with Carmelo Anthony, a guy that didn't end up working out with their roster, what would be a best case scenario? I mean, what sort of pie in the sky that's out there that they could potentially end up with? What's best case scenario in your mind?
Well, here's what a dire financial straits the Thunder's in. Best case scenario is they somehow get rid of Carmelo's salary and don't really get anything back. They just get rid of that money. Dennis Schroeder, he's got some attributes as a player. He's got some downside too, but he's on a $15 million a year contract, 3 years left. So, you're trading one problem for another. So if they could just get out of the money, I don't think they're looking for a ball player anymore. If one would come, fine. But the holy grail for them is somehow get out of this money and not have it have long-lasting impact on the cap.
There's just such difficulty in getting out of that money at this juncture because you have so few teams that can take on some of the money without sending something back. So, like, at this point, it's really going to be difficult for the Thunder to pull off a completely getting off of that kind of money scenario. They still control their own destiny until the 31st, as Brett said. Once you get past that August 31st mark, you can still trade Carmelo Anthony, but you lose some of your controlling your own destiny in terms of being able to stretch that money out over 3 seasons, and that's why that deadline is so important.
Okay, so if getting the money off the books would be the best case scenario, Brett, do you see any players out there? I mean, again, we know it's so open-ended because you're dealing with basically anybody with cap space, which is could be a decent amount of teams if you're talking about a trade situation. Is there a guy out there that you could see being helpful to the Thunder that might legitimately be involved with the Carmelo deal?
Well, if you want to extend it out beyond teams with cap space, there are certainly a lot of players because you're talking about a sizable amount of money. So you could take back a really good player. If Cleveland really wanted to get off of Kevin Love, that works for Cleveland. you'd probably have to attach an asset to make that happen. So there's a lot of things. In terms of teams that are capped out, or teams that have cap space that might be looking to move, Kent Bazemore's a guy in Atlanta. Atlanta wants to get away from that contract. That contract is less money, so Atlanta could take Carmelo, send back a Kent Bazemore. The Thunder makes up some savings there, but you're locked into a contract for a couple of years at $18 million for a player who's not, he might help you, but he's not a difference maker for the team that you have. The thing about the Thunder is the team's not afraid to take on money back. Mm-hmm. They'll find other ways to create that money. If you take, maybe you take back a guy who makes a player like Alex Abrinas or Patrick Patterson expendable, then you can move those guys into cap space pretty easily for somebody and create a little freedom there. So they don't have to take back no money, but the ultimate bottom line here is if the Thunder waives Carmelo and stretches him, it saves $100 million. Now, there's some downside to that because of the way you're locked into paying him $9 million for 3 years. He's going to be gone 3 seasons. He's not going to be playing. You're going to be paying him $9 million. That money's going to sit on your cap and give you a little less flexibility. But they got to find a trade that's better than those savings, and that's going to be hard to do. Better than saving $100 million is tough.
And this is the upside, I think, to taking on, equal salary or any players in general in a Carmelo Anthony trade. Look, the Thunder has until the end of the year to get lower their salary cap number or their how much over the luxury tax they are until they have to pay that cost. What the Thunder does when they take on players, say they take on 2 players in a Carmelo Anthony trade, it's not out of the realm of possibility that they don't take one of those players or 2 of those players and trade it for something else at the trade deadline that can make them a better team in the future. So you take on assets now, and while taking on a guy hypothetically like a Dennis Schroeder might not look like a good deal now, you're counting on Sam Presti being able to parlay that into something later. We've seen them do that time and time again in the past couple seasons, trying to shape this team around Russell Westbrook. Whether it's trading for Taj Gibson, taking Cameron Payne and flipping that for Taj Gibson and Doug McDermott, and then Doug McDermott leading to you getting Carmelo Anthony. It's not just about looking at the assets you have now and saying, oh, that doesn't fit here or that doesn't fit there. It's about taking on money now that can fit into trades later and how you can make the most of your situation. They got themselves into a bad situation with the Carmelo Anthony deal, but they can potentially make it right depending on what they get back and how they use what they get back.
But it might not be a get it right with this first move. It might be one move, 2 moves, wherever down the line before we see
it's
it.
It's chess, not checkers.
It's chess, not checkers. Very good. Last word on this, Barry. I'm wondering about Carmelo being connected to the Rockets. That's sort of been, if there's one thing about these rumors and all this talk that we've heard, that's the one that kind of keeps coming up is Carmelo to the Rockets, Carmelo to the Rockets. He would stay in the West. He would obviously be on a team that the Thunder, their fan base is aware of. Is that, we've talked about best case, worst case scenarios for the Thunder as it relates to this, but if Carmelo ends up there, is that potentially the worst place he could move for the Thunder because so many people will be paying attention to how that all works out?
I think it's the best place he could go for the Thunder because the Rockets lost Mbute, they lost Trevor Ariza. They need some spry legs on the perimeter, and Carmelo's not bringing them that. So Carmelo will make some baskets against the Thunder if he's in Houston, no doubt about it. But if you're trying to beat the Rockets, you want Houston to not be able to replace those 2 guys who were so valuable, particularly Trevor Ariza, a wing guy who can defend like a madman. So if they want to bring in Carmelo as supplement to those voids, have at it, Houston.
I can't wait until Carmelo Anthony hits that first game-winning catch-and-shoot 3-pointer against the Thunder this year. It's gonna be very entertaining to see him do his celebration running down the court in Chesapeake Energy Arena off of a catch-and-shoot 3 from a James Harden driving kick. I'm looking forward to that.
Here's what's crazy to me. Houston is militant about they don't want any 18-foot shots.
Yep.
You shoot in the paint or you shoot a 3. And now they're going to sign Carmelo, who is the king of the 18-footer.
Yeah.
Strikes me as odd.
I have a strange suspicion that Carmelo Anthony's going to adhere to what the Houston Rockets want to do.
Interesting.
Just a hunch. I feel like they're going to make it work.
All right.
Not defensively. That's not going to work.
Well, I said before last word, but now the real last word. Everybody here think he's headed to the Rockets eventually?
Yeah, maybe Miami's still a thing. Okay. Miami makes a lot of sense to me. Dwayne Wade's a good friend. Miami, I think an underrated aspect of Miami, the reputation that its medical staff has for kind of prolonging careers. So I think all those and the fact that it's Miami, I think all those factors work in Miami's favor. I think ultimately it'll end up being Houston, but I wouldn't discount Miami.
Miami's fascinating to me from this regard that they have a lot of these long-term contracts, these 3-4 year contracts that they might want to get off of, and not necessarily that those guys are bad players, but they might want to reset and have a little bit more flexibility going into the summer of 19, the summer of 20, where some of these big-name free agents are going to come open. Miami, look, I had a chance to talk to Josh Richardson a couple weeks ago, Edmond Santa Fe product. He's on a 3 or 4 year deal. If you want to send him down this way for Carmelo Anthony and maybe throw another guy in, I'd be perfectly fine with that. He's one of the best two-way players in the league. I have a feeling they're not going to give him up, but I'd love to have that guy in town.
Barry's eyebrows are raised.
You think Pat Riley's had a lobotomy? Crying out loud.
All right, so Barry's saying unlikely to that, I guess.
Not bloody likely.
Not going to probably happen. All right, hey, we talk about whether Carmelo could end up with the Rockets. Obviously, a Western Conference team would rearrange some things there. But already a rearrangement this week is Kawhi Leonard leaving the Spurs, DeMar DeRozan coming to the Spurs. Barry, let's start with you. How does this change the Spurs moving forward?
Well, I mean, it's long term. It hurts them because, I mean, it's stark reality has hit. They're not going to have the continuation of this dynasty in the form of being led by Kawhi Leonard. And that was the plan, and it was a great plan, and it looked like it was in place. Short term, you know, the Spurs were really good last year. They were 7th seed, but, you know, they could have been, you know, they were right there knocking on the door of 3rd without Kawhi Leonard. He only played 9 games. So they'll probably be a little bit better than they were a year ago, but that's not really up to San Antonio's level of championship contender. So in the short term, they're going to be what we've seen the last couple of years. In the long term, they're going to have to retool and see what they can do. I don't know that they've figured out their plan. They don't want to totally rebuild. That's clear. But you know, I thought it was a pretty good trade for San Antonio from this point. The Spurs were not in a position of strength. You're talking about a guy that was going to leave and says he wants to go to L.A., and you don't want to trade with the Lakers. You know, I don't know how you make a trade like that. I thought they got about the best deal they could because DeMar DeRozan is a quality player. He's an all-star. He's not a perfect player, but you know, put him and LaMarcus Aldridge on the court, and you're going to score some points. And the Spurs always play defense, and that's not a bad place to start.
Eric, you wrote in the Thursday Oklahoman about the Kawhi move and whether Paul George and the way things played out with him had any influence on sort of paving the way for Toronto to acquire Kawhi. Dive into that a little bit, because the George trade, obviously, it was not what he said was his destination choice either.
Yeah, you know, it's an interesting look because all the time leading up to the Paul George coming to Oklahoma City, everybody thought he was going to go to the Lakers. Even when, you know, even days before he made his announcement, we thought he was going to the Lakers. But, you know, it turns out that the Thunder did a great job of recruiting him throughout the year, made this feel like a home for him. Russell Westbrook played a big part in that. And I think that has been a reflection on some teams since that's happened, that, you know, Toronto was willing to take this leap, make this jump. You know, this is a team that's coming off of a 59-win season. They were #1 seed in the Eastern Conference, and they didn't stay pat. Even when LeBron James ends up leaving Cleveland, they could have kept their team together and said, we're going to run this thing back because LeBron's out of the East. But, you know, they're being proactive. They got rid of Dwayne Casey, who was the coach of the year in the NBA.
I still don't understand, guys.
For some reason
got rid of that guy. You know, they traded a franchise centerpiece in DeMar DeRozan that wanted to be in that city, that grew up in that city, a guy they drafted. But as I wrote in that piece, you know, Kawhi Leonard not only is a better player, he's a superstar two-way player compared to a very good player, and you just don't get an opportunity when you're a Toronto or an Oklahoma City to get free agents to sit down and talk to you. And as great as a city as Toronto is, I'm not saying anything about the city, it doesn't have a history of being able to sit down with free agents and get that opportunity to bring those guys in. So when you have an opportunity to upgrade your roster hypothetically, even if it's for a year, I think that you take that risk. I think that risk is being taken because Toronto's seen what Oklahoma City's done in a year.
The whole idea that Toronto's an undesirable location, which
it's mind-boggling.
It's so bizarre to me, guys.
Top 5 city in the league.
So, Brett, lastly, you know, obviously, no Kawhi Leonard, great, I mean, top 5 player in the world probably right now, but DeMar DeRozan, pretty good player. They also lose Danny Green to the Spurs. How are the Spurs going to look different in your mind? Greg Popovich's been doing this a long time, but how does this make the Spurs look?
Well, as Barry said, pretty good team last year, and they really didn't have Kawhi Leonard effectively. Played 9 games, so I think they're a better team today. Not a better team than they would have been with a healthy Kawhi, but a better team than they were last season. The other thing I think you have to factor in here, we'll see because it's Greg Popovich, and it's a rookie, but there are a lot of people really high on Lonnie Walker IV. He's my personal favorite Lonnie Walker of all of them. I don't know much about the first 3, but he's a bit of a character. I think he's going to be a guy that actually I think Popovich might enjoy. He's a guy who I think could be a scorer and could help them out a little bit as a rookie. The question with them, I think, defensively, Barry mentioned they always guard. They're always a good defensive team. DeMar DeRozan is not a good defensive player. So how he fits into that, how Popovich makes all that work is going to be the big question. But here's the thing. It's the Spurs, and it's Greg Popovich. And so until they prove otherwise, they get the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. All right. Lots still going on in the offseason. In the NBA, we'll continue to talk Thunder on Thunder Thursday. So keep coming back. We got more coming. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.